The massive Zephyrian research vessel times quantum edge times drifted silently through the debris field that had once been the contested Kepler 442 system. Admiral Vexthara stood before the primary viewing screen. Her forearms crossed in contemplation as she watched her science teams catalog the wreckage. The battle here had ended 3 standard cycles ago, but the implications of what had transpired still sent ripples of unease through the Galactic Consortium. Admiral, called Chief Science Officer Krilten from his console, his tentacles dancing across holographic displays with practiced efficiency. We've located the human vessel. The one designated UES Defiance. In their tactical databases, Vexthara's mandibles clicked together a sign of interest among her species. The humans were still relatively new to galactic politics, having achieved faster-than-light travel only 50 of their years ago. Most species required centuries to develop such technology, yet humans had somehow compressed this timeline dramatically. More disturbing still, they had immediately begun constructing warships that defied conventional understanding. "Status of the vessel?" she inquired, her translator converting her clicks and whistles into standard galactic common. "Structurally intact, Admiral. Approximately 60% of the hull shows battle damage, but the core systems appear to have been deliberately shut down rather than destroyed. Our preliminary scans suggest the crew evacuated in an orderly fashion." This was unusual. In most space battles, vessels either emerged victorious or were completely destroyed. The fact that a human ship had survived such extensive damage and managed an organized evacuation suggested either remarkable luck or something far more concerning. "Prepare a full analysis team," Vexthara ordered. "I want every system aboard that vessel examined, cataloged, and understood. The consortium needs to know exactly what we're dealing with." As the specialized research pods launched toward the drifting battleship, Vexthara reflected on humanity's rapid ascension to galactic prominence. The species had emerged from their homeworld with primitive fusion drives and basic energy weapons, yet within decades they had somehow revolutionized their technology. Their ships moved faster, hit harder, and survived longer than anything in the known galaxy. The times UES Defiance times hung before them like a metallic predator, even in its damaged state. Unlike the sleek, curved designs favored by most galactic civilizations, human vessels were angular, brutal-looking constructs that seemed designed more for intimidation than aesthetic appeal. This particular ship stretched nearly 2 kilometers in length, its dark hull scarred by energy burns and kinetic impacts. "Analysis team reporting successful boarding," Krilten announced. "They're establishing a mobile command center in what appears to be the vessel's forward observation deck." "Excellent. Begin with standard threat assessment protocols. I want to know about their weapons, shields, propulsion, everything." Dr. Mordain, the consortium's leading xenotechnology specialist, led the boarding team through the eerily quiet corridors of the human battleship. The artificial gravity remained functional, and emergency lighting cast long shadows across walls lined with incomprehensible symbols and markings. The human written language was still being decoded, but certain patterns were beginning to emerge. "The construction is remarkably robust," Mordain observed, running his scanner along a bulkhead. "These walls are composed of some form of layered metallic composite I've never encountered. The molecular structure appears to be deliberately designed to absorb and disperse energy." His team spread throughout the accessible sections of the ship, each specialist focusing on their area of expertise. The propulsion engineer, Zixandra, made her way toward the engine compartments, while weapons specialist Thokran headed for what appeared to be the primary armaments control center. Within hours, the first reports began filtering back to Admiral Vexthara, and each one brought fresh cause for concern. "Admiral," Zixandra's voice crackled through the communication system, tinged with something approaching fear. "You need to see these engine specifications. The humans aren't using standard antimatter containment. They've somehow developed a fusion system that operates at efficiency levels that should be theoretically impossible." "Explain," Vexthara demanded. "The magnetic containment fields are generating forces that exceed anything in our database by orders of magnitude. According to these readings, this single vessel can maintain faster-than-light travel for months without refueling. Our best ships require resupply every few weeks." But that was only the beginning. Thokran's report from the weapons systems proved even more disturbing. "Admiral, These aren't conventional energy weapons. The humans have developed something they call kinetic bombardment systems. They're essentially launching solid projectiles at near-light speeds. The energy requirements should be massive, but somehow, they've solved the power distribution problem. Vexthara felt a chill run through her exoskeleton. Kinetic weapons were considered primitive by galactic standards, inefficient compared to directed energy systems. But if humans had found a way to accelerate physical projectiles to such velocities while maintaining targeting accuracy across interstellar distances, continue the analysis, she ordered. I want complete technical specifications on every system aboard that vessel. Dr. Mordain's team had reached the ship's central computer core, a massive crystalline structure that pulsed with residual energy even in its dormant state. Unlike the quantum processing matrices used by most advanced civilizations, the human system appeared to be based on some form of hybrid technology that combined traditional computing with what looked like organic neural networks. This is extraordinary, Mordain whispered to himself as his scanners revealed the complexity of the human data storage system. They're using some form of biological computing interface. The processing speed must be phenomenal. As the hours passed, each new discovery painted a picture of human technological advancement that defied everything the Galactic Consortium thought they knew about species development patterns. The humans hadn't simply advanced quickly, they had advanced differently, taking technological paths that other species had never even considered. The ship's defensive systems proved particularly innovative. Rather than relying solely on energy shields, the humans had developed a multi-layered protection system that combined traditional barriers with something called adaptive armor plating. The hull itself could apparently reconfigure its molecular structure in response to different types of attacks. The implications are staggering. Kriltan reported to Admiral Vexthara as the analysis teams continued their work. If these readings are accurate, this single human vessel possesses firepower equivalent to an entire consortium battle group, while maintaining defensive capabilities that would allow it to survive engagement with multiple capital ships. But perhaps most disturbing of all was what the analysis revealed about human tactical doctrine. The ship's computer systems contained detailed battle plans and strategic assessments that demonstrated a level of military thinking that was both sophisticated and utterly ruthless. They don't fight like other species, observed Commander Yilketh, the consortium's military intelligence specialist who had joined the analysis team. Most galactic civilizations engage in warfare as an extension of diplomacy, a way to gain advantage in negotiations. Humans appear to fight for complete victory or total destruction. The battle records stored in the ship's databases showed engagements where human forces had continued fighting long after any reasonable species would have surrendered or retreated. They seemed to possess an almost pathological inability to accept defeat, combined with a willingness to sacrifice their own vessels and crew members in pursuit of tactical objectives. Look at this engagement record, Yilketh continued, highlighting a particular battle sequence on his display. The humans deliberately allowed one of their ships to be destroyed in order to position enemy vessels for a coordinated attack by the remaining fleet. They traded one ship and 300 lives to eliminate an entire enemy squadron. Such calculated brutality was almost unknown among consortium species. Most civilizations valued individual lives too highly to consider such tactics. But humans seemed to view warfare as a mathematics problem, where casualties were simply variables in a larger equation. As the second day of analysis began, Dr. Mordain made a discovery that sent shockwaves through the entire research team. Deep within the ship's computer core, he uncovered files that appeared to contain technical specifications for weapons and systems that weren't even installed on the current vessel. Admiral. His voice was barely steady as he transmitted his findings. The humans aren't just building individual ships. They're developing entire technological trees simultaneously. These files contain plans for weapons systems that are generations ahead of anything currently deployed. The implications were terrifying. If humans were already planning and designing technology that surpassed their current capabilities by such margins, it suggested a level of long-term strategic thinking that dwarfed anything the consortium had encountered. What kind of weapons? Vexthara asked, though she wasn't certain she wanted to know the answer. Planetary bombardment systems that could sterilize entire worlds in minutes. Self-replicating autonomous warships. something called a stellar manipulation device that appears designed to trigger controlled supernova events. The silence that followed this revelation was profound. Even among the warlike species of the galaxy, certain lines were never crossed. The deliberate destruction of entire star systems was considered an abomination that violated the most fundamental laws of civilized warfare. Yet here were detailed technical specifications for exactly such weapons, stored casually in the computer systems of what humans considered a standard battleship. If this vessel was typical of human military capability, then the consortium was facing a threat unlike anything in recorded galactic history. "Continue the analysis," Admiral Vex Thara ordered, her voice heavy with dread. "But implement full security protocols. I want these findings classified at the highest levels until we understand the complete scope of what we're dealing with." As the research teams delved deeper into the human vessel's systems, one thing became increasingly clear. Humanity was not simply another species seeking its place among the stars. They were something entirely different, a civilization that approached technology, warfare, and expansion with a mindset that was alien even by galactic standards. The true horror was beginning to dawn on Admiral Vex Thara and her team. Humanity hadn't just achieved interstellar capability remarkably quickly, they had done so while developing military technologies that could potentially threaten every other species in the known galaxy. And if the evidence aboard this single battleship was any indication, they were only getting started. The analysis would continue for several more days, but already the Admiral knew that her report to the Consortium Council would change everything. The question was no longer whether humanity posed a threat to galactic civilization. It was whether any force in the known galaxy was capable of stopping them if they decided to expand their influence through conquest rather than diplomacy. In the depths of the human battleship, surrounded by technology that defied understanding and weapon specifications that promised destruction on an unprecedented scale, the research team worked with growing urgency. They were racing against time to understand an enemy that might already be far more advanced than anything they could imagine. The Times, UES Defiance Times, held its secrets close, but each revelation painted a picture of human capability that grew more terrifying with every passing hour. Whatever the complete truth about human technology might be, one thing was becoming abundantly clear. The galaxy would never be the same again. Dr. Mordain stood before a sealed chamber deep within the human battleship, his multiple eyes studying the warning symbols that covered every surface of the reinforced door. The translator's best efforts had managed to decode enough human text to understand that whatever lay beyond this threshold was considered extremely dangerous even by human standards. "The energy signatures from this compartment are unlike anything we've encountered," reported his assistant, a young Cathari scientist named Plixine. "The readings suggest some form of contained exotic matter." Admiral Vex Thara's voice crackled through their communication systems from the research vessel overhead. "Proceed with extreme caution, Doctor. If the humans felt the need to seal something this thoroughly, we should assume it represents a significant threat." The magnetic locks had taken 3 days to override, requiring the combined efforts of the consortium's best technicians. Human security systems were proving to be remarkably sophisticated, with multiple layers of encryption and fail-safes that seemed designed to prevent exactly the kind of analysis they were attempting. When the chamber finally opened, the research team found themselves staring at something that challenged their understanding of physics itself. Suspended in the center of the room was a sphere of what appeared to be crystallized space-time, contained within a complex web of force fields that bent light around them in impossible ways. "By the ancient stars," whispered Mordain, "they've weaponized dimensional manipulation." The sphere pulsed with energies that registered on instruments designed to detect fundamental forces. According to their readings, the contained object was somehow folding space around itself, creating gravitational effects that should have torn the ship apart. Yet the human containment system held it stable, channeling those devastating forces in ways that the research team couldn't begin to comprehend. "Admiral," Mordain called through his communicator, his voice tight with fear, "we need to evacuate this vessel immediately. The humans have developed technology that operates beyond our understanding of safe parameters." "Explain the nature of the threat, Doctor." "They're manipulating the fundamental structure of reality itself. This device appears capable of creating localized gravitational anomalies that could tear holes in normal space. If the containment fails, He didn't need to finish the sentence. Everyone on the research team understood the implications. A breach in space-time within a gravity well would create effects that could potentially destroy entire solar systems. But Admiral Vexthera's response surprised them all. Continue the analysis, Doctor. We need to understand the full scope of human capabilities, regardless of the risk. The research team exchanged nervous glances, but discipline won out over fear. They had sworn oaths to the consortium, and those oaths demanded they gather intelligence, even at the cost of their own lives. As they began scanning the dimensional weapon, other teams throughout the ship were making discoveries that painted an increasingly terrifying picture of human military doctrine. In the ship's armory, weapons specialist Thokran had uncovered personal combat equipment that defied conventional understanding. These aren't just weapons, he reported to Admiral Vexthera. They're entire tactical systems designed around individual soldiers. Each human warrior apparently carries enough firepower to level a small city. The human combat suits were marvels of miniaturization and efficiency. Powered by compact fusion reactors, they provided their wearers with strength enhancement, environmental protection, and integrated weapons systems that could adapt to virtually any combat situation. But most disturbing of all was the tactical AI that seemed to be built into each suit. The artificial intelligence systems are remarkable, Thokran continued. Each suit contains a combat computer capable of processing battlefield information and providing tactical recommendations in real time. It's as if every human soldier has access to the strategic thinking of an entire general staff. This revelation forced the research team to reconsider everything they thought they knew about human military organization. Most species relied on centralized command structures, with orders flowing down from leadership to individual soldiers. Humans appeared to have inverted this model, giving each individual warrior access to sophisticated analytical capabilities that allowed for autonomous decision-making in combat. Meanwhile, in the ship's medical bay, Dr. Yilandra was making discoveries about human biology that were equally disturbing. The medical databases contained detailed information about human physiology, revealing capabilities that explained their species' remarkable adaptability. Their baseline physical capabilities are extraordinary, she reported. Humans possess redundant biological systems that allow them to survive injuries that would be fatal to most galactic species. But more importantly, they've developed medical technologies that can enhance these natural abilities. The human medical bay contained devices that could rapidly heal wounds, enhance physical strength, and even modify genetic structures in real time. Soldiers could apparently be upgraded during active combat operations, allowing human forces to adapt to changing battlefield conditions in ways that other species couldn't match. There are records here of medical procedures that border on resurrection, Dr. Yilandra continued, her voice filled with a mixture of admiration and horror. Humans who have been declared clinically dead have been revived using technologies that somehow restore brain function, even after extended periods without oxygen. But perhaps the most chilling discovery came from the ship's Strategic Planning Center, where Commander Yilketh was analyzing human military doctrine and long-term planning documents. What he found suggested that humanity wasn't simply building an impressive military, they were preparing for a type of warfare that other species had never even imagined. Admiral. His voice was barely steady as he transmitted his findings. The humans aren't planning to fight individual battles, or even wars. They're designing their entire civilization as a military instrument. The strategic documents outlined plans for converting civilian infrastructure to military purposes within a matter of days. Human factories could apparently be retooled to produce weapons and military equipment with minimal notice. Their educational systems were designed to provide every citizen with basic combat training alongside traditional academic subjects. It's not just their technology that's unprecedented, Yilketh continued. It's their entire approach to existence. They've somehow managed to create a civilization that can transform itself from peaceful exploration to total warfare faster than most species can mobilize a single battle fleet. This discovery forced Admiral Vexthara to confront a terrifying possibility. If humans could reorganize their entire society for military purposes with such speed and efficiency, then any assessment of their current military capabilities was meaningless. They could potentially multiply their fighting strength by orders of magnitude within months of deciding to do so. Back in the dimensional weapon chamber, Dr. Mordain was uncovering technical specifications that revealed the true scope of human ambitions. The weapon system wasn't designed for ship-to-ship combat, or even planetary bombardment. It was apparently intended to target fundamental forces that held entire star systems together. "They're not just thinking about winning battles," he whispered to his assistant. "They're planning to reshape the galaxy itself." The technical documents described weapons that could accelerate the evolution of stars, trigger controlled black hole formation, and even manipulate the expansion of space-time itself. These weren't theoretical studies or distant research goals. They were active development projects with detailed timelines and resource allocation charts. As the analysis entered its 5th day, the accumulated evidence began to paint a picture that challenged everything the Galactic Consortium believed about the nature of civilization and warfare. Humans hadn't simply developed advanced technology, they had approached the entire concept of existence from a fundamentally different perspective. Where other species viewed technology as a tool for improving life and enabling exploration, humans seemed to view it primarily as a means of ensuring survival through superior force. Their entire civilization appeared to be organized around the principle that any threat could be overcome through the application of sufficient violence and technological superiority. "The psychological profiles are equally disturbing," reported Dr. Kesisthal, the team's xenopsychology specialist. "Human cultural databases contain extensive information about their species' history, and the patterns are remarkably consistent across all time periods. Human history, as recorded in the ship's databases, was an unbroken chain of conflicts, innovations, and expansions driven by competition between different groups within their own species. Unlike most civilizations, which had achieved internal peace before reaching for the stars, humans had carried their competitive nature with them into space. They don't appear to have any concept of permanent peace," Kesthal continued. "Every treaty, every alliance, every cooperative agreement in their history has been viewed as a temporary arrangement to be maintained only as long as it serves their interests." This revelation forced the research team to reconsider the nature of humanity's current relationships with other galactic species. Were the humans genuinely interested in peaceful coexistence? Or were they simply gathering intelligence and resources while building the strength necessary to dominate their neighbors? The evidence aboard the Times UES Defiance Times suggested the latter possibility. The ship's databases contained detailed intelligence reports on every major galactic civilization, including comprehensive analyses of their military capabilities, economic systems, and potential weaknesses. "They're not just studying us for peaceful contact," Admiral Vexthera realized as she reviewed the intelligence summaries. "They're conducting a comprehensive threat assessment of every species in the galaxy." The human intelligence files contained contingency plans for conflicts with dozens of different civilizations, including detailed strategies for exploiting each species' particular vulnerabilities. More disturbing still, many of these plans seem designed not just to defeat potential enemies, but to completely eliminate them as future threats. "Look at this analysis of the Mordian hegemony," Commander Yilketh pointed out, highlighting a particular section of the intelligence files. "The humans have identified 17 different ways to target their calcium-based biology, including weapons that would specifically attack their skeletal structure. Similar species-specific tactical assessments existed for virtually every known galactic civilization. The humans had apparently spent considerable effort developing weapons and strategies tailored to the unique characteristics of potential enemies, suggesting a level of preparation that went far beyond defensive planning." As the research team delved deeper into the ship's systems, they began to uncover evidence of human activities that had gone completely unnoticed by galactic intelligence services. Hidden within routine trade missions and diplomatic exchanges, human agents had apparently been gathering detailed information about industrial capabilities, military installations, and government structures throughout consortium space. "They've been mapping our entire civilization," Dr. Mordain reported with growing alarm. "Not just our public infrastructure, but our classified military facilities, our emergency government protocols, even our deepest scientific research installations." The scope of human intelligence gathering was breathtaking in its thoroughness and terrifying in its implications. They possessed detailed blueprints of facilities that most consortium member species didn't even know existed, along with personnel files on key military and political leaders throughout the galaxy. But the most chilling discovery came when the research team accessed the ship's communication logs and discovered evidence of a vast network of human intelligence assets operating throughout consortium space. Disguised as traders, diplomats, and researchers, human operatives had apparently infiltrated virtually every level of galactic society. Admiral, Dr. Mordain's voice was barely steady as he transmitted his final report. We're not analyzing the technology of a potentially hostile species. We're examining the weapons and intelligence assets of an enemy that has already begun preparing for galactic conquest. The Times UES Defiance Times wasn't just a battleship, it was a command and control node in a network that spanned the entire galaxy. The humans hadn't simply achieved impressive technological advancement. They had systematically prepared for a conflict that could determine the future of every sentient species among the stars. As the research teams prepared to evacuate the human vessel, Admiral Vex Thara found herself faced with a decision that could determine the fate of galactic civilization. The evidence was overwhelming. Humanity represented a threat unlike anything the consortium had ever encountered. The question now was whether to share this knowledge with the Consortium Council, knowing that it would almost certainly lead to a preemptive war, or to attempt some form of diplomatic solution with a species that seemed prepared for nothing less than total galactic domination. Either choice could doom billions of lives. The only certainty was that the galaxy would never be the same again. Admiral Vex Thara stood alone in her private chambers, aboard the Times Quantum Edge Asterisk, the weight of 5 days' worth of revelations pressing down on her like the gravity of a collapsing star. The final reports from her research teams lay scattered across her desk, each document containing information that could reshape the political landscape of the entire galaxy. The door chimed softly, and she granted entry to Dr. Mordain, whose usual composed demeanor had been replaced by obvious signs of stress. His multiple eyes were bloodshot from extended exposure to human technology, and his normally steady hands trembled slightly as he activated his personal privacy shield. "Admiral, there's something else," he said without preamble. "Something we discovered in the final hours before evacuation that changes everything we thought we understood about human intentions." Vex Thara felt her blood run cold. After everything they had already uncovered, the possibility of yet another revelation was almost more than she could bear. "What did you find, Doctor?" Hidden within the deepest levels of the ship's computer core, we discovered what appears to be a complete record of human decision-making processes regarding galactic contact. "Admiral, the humans know that we've been analyzing their technology. They've known from the moment we boarded their vessel." The implications hit her like a physical blow. How is that possible? The ship was completely powered down. Passive monitoring systems. Devices so sophisticated that they don't register on our detection equipment. The humans have been watching us study their technology. And according to the decision matrices we discovered, this was exactly what they intended to happen. Dr. Mordain activated a holographic display that showed a complex flowchart of human strategic planning. The diagram was so intricate that it took several minutes to understand its basic structure. But when the pattern became clear, Vex Thara felt her legs weaken beneath her. "They wanted us to find their ship," she whispered. "The entire scenario was orchestrated. Not just orchestrated, Admiral, optimized. The humans have run thousands of simulations of first contact scenarios, analyzing every possible response pattern from dozens of different galactic species. Our reaction to their technology has been predicted with remarkable accuracy." The flowchart showed branching decision trees that accounted for virtually every possible consortium response to the discovery of advanced human capabilities. Whether they chose diplomatic engagement, economic pressure, military preparation, or preemptive attack, the humans had apparently planned countermeasures for each scenario. "Show me our current position on their prediction matrix," Vex Thara ordered, though she wasn't certain she wanted to see the answer. "Doctor." Mordain highlighted a section of the flowchart that made her stomach clench with dread. "According to their models, there is a 97% probability that we will recommend immediate military action to the Consortium Council. They've calculated our response down to the individual level, predicting which council members will support which courses of action." But that wasn't the worst part. As Dr. Mordain continued to explain the human strategic planning, it became clear that every decision path the consortium might choose ultimately led to the same outcome: the systematic subjugation of galactic civilization by human forces. If we choose diplomacy, he continued, they've prepared economic and technological advantages that will make peaceful coexistence impossible to maintain. If we choose military action, they've already positioned assets to neutralize our most critical installations before we can respond effectively. The true genius of the human strategy was becoming apparent. By allowing the consortium to discover their technological capabilities in a controlled manner, they had forced their potential enemies into a position where every possible response played into human strategic objectives. Admiral, Dr. Mordain's voice dropped to barely above a whisper. There's one more thing. The human databases contain detailed psychological profiles of every member of your command crew, including yourself. They know exactly how each of us will react to this information. Vexthara closed her eyes and tried to process the full scope of what they were facing. Humanity hadn't simply developed superior technology. They had approached the entire concept of galactic expansion as a strategic problem to be solved through careful planning and overwhelming preparation. What do their projections say about my decision? She asked, though part of her already knew the answer. They predict you will call an emergency session of the Consortium Council within 6 standard hours of receiving our final reports. You'll present the evidence of human technological superiority and recommend immediate mobilization of all available military assets. The accuracy of the prediction was terrifying in its precision. That was exactly what she had been planning to do. But if the humans had anticipated this response and prepared countermeasures, then following her instincts might doom the very civilization she was trying to protect. What happens if we do nothing? She asked. If we simply classify the information and pretend this analysis never took place? Dr. Mordain manipulated the holographic display to show a different branch of the human decision tree. According to their models, inaction leads to gradual human expansion throughout consortium space over the next 50 years. They've already identified resource-rich systems that lack adequate defensive capabilities and have apparently begun positioning assets for eventual colonization. Every option seemed to lead to the same result: human dominance over galactic civilization. The only variables were the timeline and the number of casualties involved in the process. Doctor, Vexthara said slowly, in your professional assessment, is there any action we can take that might prevent human expansion without triggering the response scenarios they've prepared for? Mordain was quiet for a long moment, his multiple eyes studying the complex display. There might be one possibility, Admiral, but it would require us to act in a way that contradicts everything the humans believe about our species' psychological makeup. Explain. Their entire strategy depends on predictable responses from galactic civilizations. Every scenario they've prepared assumes that we will react according to established patterns of behavior, that we'll seek diplomatic solutions or military responses based on our historical precedents. Vexthara began to understand where he was leading. You're suggesting we do something completely unprecedented. Exactly. Something so contrary to established galactic norms that their prediction models can't account for it. But what could possibly be so radical that an entire civilization dedicated to strategic planning hadn't considered it? As Dr. Mordain continued to explain his analysis of human psychology, a terrifying possibility began to emerge. Admiral, the humans have one significant psychological weakness that they may not fully understand themselves. Their entire approach to conflict is based on the assumption that other species share their competitive nature. They've prepared for opposition, negotiation, and even surrender, but they haven't seriously considered the possibility of voluntary cooperation. You're suggesting we ally with them willingly? More than that. I'm suggesting we offer them something they want, more than galactic conquest. Complete access to our scientific databases, our research facilities, and our accumulated knowledge from thousands of years of galactic exploration. The idea was so radical that it took several minutes for Vexthara to fully process its implications. Rather than opposing human expansion or attempting to negotiate from a position of weakness, they could potentially redirect human ambitions by offering them something more valuable than military victory. The humans appear to be driven by a desire for advancement and growth. Dr. Mordain continued, if we can convince them that cooperation offers greater benefits than conquest, we might be able to avoid the scenarios their strategic planners have prepared for. But such a strategy would require unprecedented coordination among consortium member species. Every major civilization would need to agree to share their most closely guarded scientific secrets with a species that had been preparing for galactic conquest. The risks are enormous, Vexthara acknowledged. If we're wrong about human psychology, we'll have given them access to every piece of technology and scientific knowledge in the galaxy. True. But if we're right, we might be able to transform humanity from an existential threat into the most powerful ally galactic civilization has ever known. As Admiral Vexthara considered this unprecedented possibility, she realized that Dr. Mordain was correct about one thing. Any decision they made would be fundamentally different from anything the humans had anticipated. Their strategic planning had accounted for opposition and surrender, but not for voluntary partnership from a position of informed understanding. Prepare a secure communication to the Consortium Council, she ordered finally. But we're not going to recommend military action or diplomatic negotiation. We're going to propose something that's never been attempted in galactic history. Admiral, we're going to tell the humans the truth. All of it. We're going to explain exactly what we discovered aboard their ship, how we analyzed their strategic planning, and what we understand about their long-term objectives. And then we're going to offer them a partnership that makes conquest unnecessary. Dr. Mordain's eyes widened in surprise. You're gambling with the fate of galactic civilization. Oh. No, Doctor. I'm gambling that human strategic planning, for all its sophistication, is based on an incomplete understanding of what's possible when civilizations choose cooperation over competition. As she began composing the most important message in galactic history, Admiral Vexthara reflected on the strange irony of their situation. The humans had prepared for every possible form of opposition, but they might be completely unprepared for genuine partnership offered by species who understood exactly what humanity was capable of achieving. The message would offer humans complete access to consortium technology, scientific knowledge, and research facilities, in exchange for human commitment to peaceful expansion and shared governance of galactic civilization. It was a gamble that could either save countless lives or doom every species in the galaxy. But as she studied the human strategic planning documents one final time, Admiral Vexthara realized that it might be the only choice that offered any hope of a future where multiple species could coexist among the stars. The humans had proven they were capable of dominating the galaxy through superior technology and strategic planning. The question now was whether they were capable of something even more challenging: sharing it. 3 days later, the first human response arrived through secure diplomatic channels. The message was brief and unsigned, but its contents sent shockwaves through the Consortium Council chambers. Your analysis was impressive but incomplete. We've been monitoring Consortium communications for 6 months and are aware of your decision-making process. We accept your offer of partnership, but propose modifications to the terms that better reflect the true balance of capabilities between our civilizations. We suggest a face-to-face meeting to discuss the establishment of what your databases would classify as the first truly galactic government. Humanity looks forward to working with our new partners in building a future worthy of all our species. The message included coordinates for a meeting location deep in neutral space, along with technical specifications for communication systems that could facilitate real-time discussion between hundreds of different species and linguistic groups. Admiral Vexthara smiled as she realized that her gamble had paid off in ways she hadn't anticipated. The humans hadn't just accepted partnership, they had revealed that they had been planning for this possibility all along. Their strategic thinking was even more sophisticated than the consortium had realized, encompassing not just conquest, but the possibility of voluntary cooperation between equals. The galaxy was about to change forever. But for the first time in days, Admiral Vexthara believed it might be changing for the better. As the consortium prepared for the most important diplomatic meeting in galactic history, one thing became clear. Humanity's greatest strength wasn't their advanced technology or strategic planning capabilities. It was their ability to adapt their objectives based on new information and unexpected opportunities. The future remained uncertain, but it was no longer predetermined. And that, Admiral Vexthara realized, might be the most human gift of all. The belief that any situation could be improved through careful thought, bold action, and the willingness to embrace possibilities that others might never consider. The stars themselves seemed brighter as the greatest experiment in galactic history began.